Okay, so over the last few days, we finally got confirmation on who's being casted to play Joel and Ellie on HBO's The Last of Us TV show adaptation. And even though they were super far off from my initial fan casting, I rejoiced when I got the news that Bella Ramsey and Pedro Pascal were gonna be filling those roles. Both from Game of Thrones, by the way. I guess HBO likes to keep it in the family. And Pedro Pascal, man, he is absolutely taking over the TV streaming world. With The Mandalorian and then this, he would be the star of two huge shows. Well, I'm pretty sure this show is gonna be huge. I don't know yet, but I'm pretty sure it's gonna be amazing. And most of his work on The Mandalorian is voice only anyway, so he's all set. And Bella Ramsey, I don't have a lot to say because I haven't really seen her in anything other than the Game of Thrones, but she was a real kick-ass in that. This little girl killed a giant and died doing that. She got my Ellie test passed. I've been eyeing this project very closely since they announced it, and it all points towards it being a massive success. Neil Druckmann, the creator and writer for both games in the franchise, is coming to the show and teaming up with Chernobyl creator Craig Mason, I'm sure I'm butchering that, to write and adapt the game. And if you haven't seen Chernobyl yet, I highly recommend it. It's excellent television. Although I got to come forward and admit I wasn't in love with the story on The Last of Us Part 2, but the talent to rectify certain decisions is there, and I am very much looking forward to whenever this drops. And all of this Last of Us talk made me want to go back and revisit that cutthroat post-apocalyptic world. When this game came out, I was all about zombies, baby. That shit was my secret kink. I loved The Walking Dead. And note that past tense, loved. And anything that had to do with zombies, I ate it up. Pun very much intended. So when I heard about this game about infected in the world 20 years deep into the apocalypse, I had to get my hands on that. And from the first time sitting on the floor with the controller in my hands during the first 10 minutes of the game, it became my absolute favorite game of all time. And little innocent baby-faced NJ didn't know that this game had some of the hardest emotional kicks in the nutsack he was ever gonna be at the foot end of. I'm going in full detail of this game, and this is your spoiler warning. If you haven't played this game, do yourself a good old solid and play it. Or if not, if you don't have the time, just watch the cutscenes. It's a couple hours long, but you won't regret it. If you don't care, then strap in. Here we go. Before we move on, I'd like you to poke that little like button on the left corner. Yeah, that's the place it is. And that subscribe and hit that little notification bell so you are always up to date with what I upload.
Do it.
Moving on. The Last of Us was developed by Naughty Dog and released on June 14, 2013 to very wide acclaim by the gaming community, subsequently winning the Game of the Year, because of course it did. The gameplay of The Last of Us is good, but the real reason everybody fell in love with it was the narrative and the characters that narrative carried. It is a deep look into what society would most likely devolve into in a similar situation, and hope we never get a taste of what that would be like. But more specifically, it is about the relationship between two characters going in on a journey and creating a strong emotional bond during that. The character of Joel is arguably one of the most morally ambiguous characters in video game history, and Ellie is just the most kick-ass, irreverent, and loved sidekicks in video game history. Remember Ashley from Resident Evil 4? Yeah, she is the extreme opposite in the spectrum of that. These two took me and everyone else on a real roller coaster. There's not really a lot I can add or say that anything new about this game that hasn't been said to nausea about 1,000,000 times, but I'm just gonna stick to my personal experience with it and how it hit me. So the game opens with Joel and his daughter Sarah on Joel's birthday. She gives him a watch as a present, and Joel jokes about it being broken.
But I think it's stuck. It's not...
What? No.
Oh, haha.
This is important for later, so, be on the lookout for that. After putting her to sleep, she wakes up to the phone ringing, and it's Tommy, Sarah's uncle and Joel's brother, frantically asking for Joel before the line cuts out. And here's where we come in. Sarah is who we first take control of in the game, so we naturally feel attached to her from the get-go. We are her. As we walk around the room, there's an optional interactive birthday card that's super lovely and reflects how their father-daughter relationship is, and she forgets to give it to him, and that is important too. We go into Joel's room and there's some news reportings on the TV pointing to something going very wrong very fast. As an explosion occurs on the TV, we can see that same exact explosion through the window, and Joel is still nowhere to be found. And this is supposed to inspire some level of isolation on the player and real anxiety, because whatever's gone to shit has gone to shit very close to home. Regardless, as you keep exploring and looking for Joel, there are some other interactive things to amp up the anxiety. At one point, we hear a dog barking outside, and then he suddenly stops because something got it. Eventually we do find Joel, but not really in the way we would have wished. He is very distraught, very disturbed, and clearly something is after him. Soon enough we find out that the next door neighbor has been infected, and Joel takes him out. And here is where I have one of my very few, very minuscule gripes about the game. For a game that prides itself for being so anchored in reality, so much so that the cordyceps fungus that is the root of the zombie infection in the game is a real thing, and it affects ants mostly, but for a game that's so grounded, they kind of made everything go to shit too fast. Like overnight, everyone went ahead and got infected, and everybody started showing symptoms at the exact same time, so it couldn't be contained. And I know it is like this for narrative reasons, but we need to get to the point fast and not beat around the bush too much. But still, just an observation. Following this, Tommy picks them up and they hit the road trying to get out of town. During this sequence, the player is meant to just sit down and take in the image of everything going to hell. The chaos on the street, Joel straight up ignoring a family on the side of the road, and people getting their faces ripped off. After witnessing all of the insanity, we take a little detour, at which point we get into a car crash, and Ashley is injured to the point of not being able to walk anymore. Here is where Joel comes in, as we have to carry her to safety. In the midst of all the mayhem, Joel is separated from Tommy, and then we have to sit down and watch this play out.
It's okay, baby. We're safe. We're safe. Hey, we need help.
Stop!
Please. It's my daughter. I think her leg is broken.
Stop right there!
Okay. We're not sick.
Got a couple of civilians in the outer perimeter. Please advise.
Daddy, what about Uncle Tommy?
We're gonna get you to safety and go back for him, okay?
Sir, there's a little girl. But... Yes, sir.
Listen, buddy, we've just been through hell. Okay, we just need... Shit. Please don't. Oh, no. Sarah. Move your hands, baby. I know, baby, I know. Listen to me, I know this hurts, baby. You're gonna be okay, baby. Stay with me. All right, I'm gonna pick you up. I know, baby, I know it hurts. Come on, baby, please. I know, baby, I know. Sarah. Baby. Don't do this to me, baby. Don't do this to me, baby. Come on. No. No. No, no, no. Please. 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 Please don't. Please.
This is how this game decides to open, and it lets you know it's not gonna hold anything back. It's not gonna pull any punches, and it's not gonna let you look away. Sarah dies in Joel's arms, someone who, even though for a short period of time, we got to know and see her personality and get attached to it, and now she is dead. And with every little moan and groan and plead and whine, we get introduced to the world of The Last of Us. Following that rather disturbing sequence of events, we get a little opening montage in which we get snippets of information regarding the state of the world after the infection took over, and we hear of a group called the Fireflies. Important shit, write it down.
Write that down, write that down!
Then we jump cut to 20 years into the future, and this transition makes it look as if Joel was dreaming about that event so long ago, communicating to the player that he is still not over it after so many years. The pain and the trauma still haunts him to this day. And at this point, we get introduced to Tess, Joel's friend and possible boo. I always got the feeling that there was something there, but it was never explicitly said or shown. But I still got those vibes. However, she talks about this guy Robert who apparently turned on them, and you gotta go get him. This functions as the first mission in the game. As you walk through the quarantine zone, you get a bit more of a feel of how the world runs nowadays. And as we get ready to leave the quarantine zone, there's an attack on one of the military trucks by the Fireflies. And the game takes this moment to get us introduced to some of the controller mechanics in the game. Running to a safe building and healing. The gameplay section earlier with Sarah didn't really let us experiment much with the controllers, given that it was just an introduction to the game. Later, we find a way out through some buildings and we have our first encounter with the spores. These spores infect you and effectively kill you if you breathe them in, forcing anyone who wants to go through them to wear a gas mask. Wherever there's a dead infected, the fungus keeps just growing out of their body and it spreads the spore. Pretty gross, and again, a real thing. As you keep making your way through the buildings, you find yourself facing the infected for the first time. Now, there are different kinds of infected that get introduced throughout the gameplay. These ones are the runners, a much more earlier stage of the infection. In easier difficulties, you get the ability of basically the daredevil powers. You listen and you hear through walls, essentially. But in much more harder difficulties, that ability is taken away, which makes for a much more anchored in reality experience. I suggest anyone who wants to really get into the world of this game to play it in one of those harder modes. Not me for this though, because I wanted a quick playthrough to refresh my memory and not tear my eyeballs out and yeet the controller across the room. It can be a bit frustrating at parts, but much more grounded as the difficulty mode is named. Regardless, you get a bit of combat introduction during this section, and you get to choose whether to engage all balls to the wall combat or more assassin stealth like this. Also, it's worth pointing out that around the world there are various interactive items and collectibles and little trinkets that bring you information on an event that happened in that area. They don't tie into the main story at all most of the time, but it is a great way to expand on this world and to make it feel lived in. Eventually you do run into some of Robert's men, and this is our gunfight tutorial basically. You learn to take cover and a little bit of how the game's AI works. Again, the gameplay is kind of basic throughout the game, but it functions just well for what they're aiming for, which is a character-driven narrative. After taking a lot of Robert's men out, you eventually get to him and he reveals that he sold some weapons that weren't his to the Fireflies. Tess whacks him and the leader of the Fireflies, Marlene, is introduced here. She proposes to give them their weapons back in exchange of smuggling a little girl, Ellie, out of the safe zone and take her to a Firefly rendezvous point in the Capitol building. Tess leaves with Marlene to check the guns and Joel is in charge of watching Ellie for the time being. At which point Ellie makes a comment on Joel's watch.
Your watch is broken.
The broken watch is meant to symbolize Joel being stuck in time. The theme of letting go from the past is very present throughout Joel's arc in the game. And the fact that the watch his daughter gave him, which would have been paired with that birthday card she never got to give him, is frozen in time shows us the depth of the trauma Joel carries with him, and the watch is a constant reminder of that. A broken watch for a broken man. And a while later, Tess comes back confirming the weapons are there, and they embark on the mission. At the limits of the safe zone, they are caught by some guards that run some tests on them, and Tess pulls the old "I'll make it worth your while" card.
Look the other way. If it make this worth your while.
Shut up.
But it doesn't work, and just after running the test on Ellie, she attacks them, and that's the end of the guards. When Tess picks up the device, it is revealed that Ellie is infected, but apparently immune, and before they can argue about it, the reinforcements arrive unseen, and you have to sneak your way out of it. Right after that, Ellie explains that the Fireflies are still trying to find a cure, and after a little pushback from Joel, he reluctantly agrees to go ahead with the mission. Making your way through the buildings, you come across the second type of infected, the clickers, and these fuckers are tough, man. They are in a bit more advanced stage of the infection, so they've grown fungi out of their faces, creating kind of a mushroom face mask that makes it impossible for you to go hand-to-hand combat with them. To take them out, you need a shiv or a good couple of headshots, and they get the name clickers because of the sound they make. As they can't see because of the mushrooms covering their eyes, they create that clicking sound, and just like bats, they see through echolocation. This makes encounters with them super tense, as you gotta go and find a way to sneak past them without making any noise. You can manipulate them by throwing glass bottles and creating noise to distract them, and this gameplay mechanic is probably one of the most recognized in the game. After finally making it to the Capitol building, we find out that the Fireflies that were supposed to meet with us died, and that Tess got bit in an encounter with infected earlier. As a last wish, she asks Joel to get Ellie to Tommy, who used to be a Firefly and might know where to take Ellie. In the middle of this, some soldiers arrived and Tess stays behind to buy you some time, and she died. Shortly after making it out of the Capitol building, we arrive at a subway station that's mostly underwater, and Ellie doesn't know how to swim. So the game implemented this little gameplay mechanic where you gotta go and get a wood pallet to move Ellie across the water. This was infamously disliked amongst the players because of the convenience of there always being a pallet around and just how repetitive it got with time. Personally, I never minded it too much, it's there, whatever. When you make it out, Joel suggests to go to a friend that owes him some favors and that he's gonna try to get a car from him. Which is like, how many favors does he owes you to give you a car in the apocalypse? Even outside the apocalypse, that's a huge deal. Imagine cars being rare as fuck and owing one to someone. Whatever, moving on. When you arrive in the town, it's trap infested, clearly indicating that whoever lives there doesn't want to be disturbed by anyone. One of the traps gets Joel, and we are treated with this little upside down shooting session. It's very disorienting and annoying really, but you get infinite ammo for this part, so it's not like you're wasting your in-game ammo for this. A man comes in to the rescue, and when we get to safety, it is revealed that he's Bill, the guy that owes Joel some favors. Joel tells him about the car, and Bill says he's gonna need a car battery that's in a truck that crashed on the other side of town. So we slice and dice our way to the truck, and it's in a school with a party of infected waiting. Somebody had already taken the battery, and we have to push our way through school, and just like in real life high school, it was harsh. Eventually we arrive at the gym and face the third type of infected in the form of a boss battle. These are called the bloaters. Up to this point, this is the latest stage of infected, and they've grown mushroom plates all over their bodies, creating a sort of armor and making them extremely tough to take down. They also have the ability to throw spore bubbles at you, making you having to move constantly, and the best way to kill them is with fire, so have those Molotov cocktails ready. There is an even later stage of infected introduced in The Last of Us Part 2, but they weren't really that innovative with it, So up to this point, they don't exist. After escaping through a back alley and working our way through some houses, we find ourselves in a house with a man that's hung himself after being infected. He was Bill's partner and the one who took the battery away in the first place. To our convenience, he already put the battery in the car, so our group takes it, drives it to the limits of town, and part ways with Bill. After driving for some time, we encounter a blocked road, forcing Joel to take a detour against his best judgment, and sometime later, we see what the trap was.
Easy. Holy shit. Help! Are we gonna help him?
Put your seatbelt on, Ellie.
Well, what about the guy?
He ain't even hurt.
Alone and forsaken by fate and by man. Oh Lord, if you hear me, take my hand.
After taking the looters out, we get a line out of Joel that alludes to his messed up past.
How did you know
Know what?
about the ambush?
I've been on both sides.
I'll take that as a yes.
Take it however you want.
Joel is not a good guy. He's not a hero, he's more of a messed up guy that's done a lot of messed up things, more in the vein of an anti-hero, and is constantly shutting himself off to Ellie to not get attached. This is shown in a later part of the game when Ellie saves Joel, and Joel just treats her as if she wasn't helpful at all, just to detach himself.
Well, you're glad I didn't, right?
I'm glad I didn't get my head blown off by a goddamn kid.
Eventually he does give in and trusts her with the rifle to cover you, showing a bit more closeness. As you work your way through the city, you meet Henry and Sam, two brothers trapped in the looter-infested city. And after facing a horde of infected and escaping, Sam is revealed to be bitten and turns. Henry has to kill him, and right after, he kills himself. A very disturbing image that shows us just how unforgiving this world really is. As we move on to fall, we finally get to Tommy's place. He's set up in a hydro plant, got workers, horses, he's doing pretty good. Tommy offers Joel a picture of Sarah he retrieved sometime after going back to their old house, and Joel rejects it, again showing how hard it is for him to handle the past, and he is not ready for it yet. After the little tour, Joel asks Tommy to finish the job and to take her to the Fireflies. Tommy refuses, and Joel brings up some old stuff that further alludes to his fucked up past.
This is how you gonna repay me, huh?
Repay you?
For all those goddamn years I took care of us.
Took care. That's what you call it? I got nothing but nightmares from those years.
You survived because of me.
It wasn't worth it?
I bring you the cure from mankind, and you wanna play the pissy little brother.
We ain't back in Boston. You lay your hands on me again, it won't end well for you.
The hell is that?
We're under attack. You still remember how to kill, right?
Yeah.
In that very moment, some looters attack the plant, and by the way, these interruptions always happen in the middle of some big argument. It's like they are waiting outside for things to get heated up to then attack. Anyways, after taking all of them out, Ellie finds out about Joel wanting to leave her with Tommy and runs away on a horse. Following her tracks, you finally find her, and Ellie confronts Joel about trying to leave her. And right after they can argue any further, they get interrupted by the looters. Again, I'm telling you, man, impeccable timing. And after once more dining looter ass, Joel changes his mind about taking Ellie, and Tommy tells him that their labs are in the University of Eastern Colorado. Upon arrival, they quickly realize there's no one home, but one of the dead Fireflies was kind enough to leave their actual location on tape before blowing his brains out. At which point some cutthroats are coming through the place, and in a scuffle with one of them, Joel is impaled on a dipstick. After weakly trying to make your way out, Ellie has to come in and help, saving Joel's life. On horseback, Joel passes out and we jump to winter and we take control of Ellie now. Okay, so at this point I honestly thought Joel had died. That was a pretty gnarly wound and the odds of him making it out were very slim, and the fact that Ellie became a playable character mid-game helped fuel that notion. After tracking a deer through the woods, we cross paths with these two, David and Buddy Boy.
Put one right between your eyes. Ditto for Buddy Boy over there.
They ask to trade the deer and Ellie asks for medicine, indicating to the player that Joel is still alive. After sending Buddy Boy for the medicine, Ellie and David stay in this little cabin and soon enough they have to face some infected. And this serves as a reason for the player to trust David a bit more than you would any stranger you'd encounter. But in this world, that's not a good idea. David gets all philosophical and we get this.
Everything happens for a reason.
Sure.
I do. And I can prove it to you. Now, this winter, that's been especially cruel. A few weeks back, I sent a group of men out to a nearby town to look for food. Only a few came back. They said that the others had been slaughtered by a crazy man. And get this, he's a crazy man traveling with a little girl. You see, everything happens for a reason. Don't get upset. It's not your fault. I'm just a kid. James, lower the gun.
No way, David. I'm not gonna let her go.
Lower the gun. Now give her the medicine.
The others won't be happy about this.
Ellie decides to be stupid and let them live. And back at the hideout, Ellie gives Joel the medicine and I'm sorry, what? Joel was impaled through his score with a dipstick. That shit looks all kinds of infected and Ellie just pulls out the Jesus serum and injects it right into the wound. I'm sorry, this is the most unrealistic part in a game where people grow mushrooms out of their asses. However, I'ma let it slide cause they have been pretty grounded so far and this is just something the writers needed to happen, although I do believe it cheapens the impact of Joel getting this hurt earlier. On the next day, David's crew tracked Ellie to where they were hiding, cause of course they did, and Ellie tries to lure them away from where Joel is. Playing as Ellie, you obviously don't have the arsenal or the abilities Joel has, so you have to play it a bit more carefully. Anyways, eventually David catches you and you get the first row look into Hannibal Lecter's kitchen. David and his crew are cannibals, and Ellie, in classic Ellie fashion, is not having any of it.
Ellie,
What?
tell them that Ellie is the little girl that broke your fucking finger.
We cut back to Joel, who is right as rain now that thanks to the Jesus serum, and after facing some of David's men, he interrogates two of them in a very brutal, very methodical manner, making the player understand that this is a technique he's used before. Following this, he gets the location and we jump back to Ellie and she kills Buddy Boy and escapes, eventually ending up in a restaurant that catches fire as the David boss battle takes place. It's pretty intense. It's a game of hide and seek in which you have to avoid stepping on broken plates on the floor to not make noise and alert him. It's a pretty cool gameplay mechanic that I wish we used more throughout the game, and it's pretty tense. Obviously, Ellie can't take him on in a hand-to-hand combat, so you gotta be more sneaky in your approach. We jump back to Joel and he gets to the restaurant right as Ellie is cutting David up, and Joel embraces her as a surrogate daughter, even sweetly calling her baby girl.
It's me.
He tried to...
Oh, baby girl. It's okay. It's okay.
From here we jump to spring, and after making it through the city and Ellie almost drowning, we finally get to the Fireflies. And it is at this point that people get a little divisive when it comes to Joel. As Ellie is unconscious from almost drowning, the group finds out that in order to make an attempt of making a vaccine, Ellie will have to die. Marlene is there, by the way, which makes me think that if she would have just stuck with Ellie, they would have made it there long before Joel. Anyways, Marlene tells Joel this and he is not happy about it. So he does the logical thing. He kills everyone at the hospital and takes Ellie away. Now, if you're wondering what my stance is on this part, both the Fireflies and Joel were in the wrong here. They should have waited for Ellie to wake up and ask her if she was willing to do this, and she probably would have been, but they took that agency away from her. And Joel, well, he killed a ton of people, but out of love, guys. Anyways, he takes Ellie to Jackson, and she clearly knows something is not right. She confronts him about it, making him swear that everything he said was true, and he does. And the last spoken word by Ellie in the game is
Okay.
as in, okay, that's clearly bullshit. This game for me was one of the best stories I've ever experienced, with some of the best acting I've ever seen in any medium, TV, movies, take your pick. Simply superb acting from everyone. I really have high hopes for the HBO adaptation, because the source material they're gonna be pulling from is without a doubt the best story ever told in video game history. And that is all I got for you today, guys. If you made it this far into the video, please like it and subscribe so you don't miss anything that I upload. And comment down below, what do you think about the news? Were you thinking someone else was gonna taking over Joel and Ellie's roles? Which is your favorite game in the franchise? And do you have any type of hope for the HBO adaptation? What direction do you think they're going? Anyways, guys, thanks again for watching. I have an Instagram account you can follow at caffeine.prince98. I don't have Twitter because I hate it, and Facebook is for the family. Catch you guys later. Peace.